Hey, long time no see, Akor Opaluwah. How the devil are you, my friend? Very good.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All the better for seeing you. So,
Sure.
you have left the bosom of your poetry family in Nottingham and moved down to London, and we have missed you. I mean, we've not been seeing each other in person, but you have been missed. The first time I met you as a photographer, and
Okay.
you were taking shots of the Mouthy Poets event, day-long
Yeah.
event at Nottingham Playhouse. And I thought you were a photographer. And then I learned, no, that was a hobby, and you're actually an engineer. And then I learned that you were a writer and a knitter and a baker and a public speaker and a sort of a proposer of poetry projects.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Tell me, of all of those things, who are you? What do you sit there and think, my name is Akor and I am?
Who am I? Oh, that started deeper than I thought. I think I like creating things, and it's that somehow creating for me has not been limited to the prevalent idea of creativity, which would be something in the arts. So if there's a problem or if there's a need for something, even if the need isn't noticed, I spend a lot of time just thinking about stuff and wanting to go through scenarios and bring out solutions to them. And so that ends up coming out in different, whatever field I'm thinking about or whatever field I'm involved in. So in poetry, it would be that rather than just write a poem, what isn't being done in poetry, and then how can that happen? And that's why half my conversation to start with, what if we do this, or what if we try this, or what if we, I always want to explore this. So I think that will be the common thread that runs through every part of my life and everything that I do.
So a creator, I like that because that does fit with all of the bits that I have seen of you. So when you first came to me as Big White Shed, we produced a book called The One About ...
Yes.
which I have scoured my shelves and I have not a single copy left. I'm gonna have to buy
I'll have to
one.
send one to
Do
you.
you have one there that you can wave at the screen? Yes. It's a beautiful thing. The
Thank
one
you.
about a young Nigerian poet in Nottingham who writes random poems about the random things he sees around the city, like shirtless men playing children or women reading books on the tram. Boom.
I somehow feel like if I'm writing another book, the name should be longer than this. I would have to fight that temptation in so many ways. But yeah, it was a nice project. I really enjoyed working with you on it. Especially, I can remember the first book I came to you with when I was like, this is like I want to do a poem, a poetry book. I printed everything out and I sent it to you. And the summary of your conclusion was, just write some more, just keep working on it. And it was just random, because I think I was actually working on that, and I was at the Starbucks that is in Market Square, and the tram went by, and this lady was with a red scarf and reading a book on it, and I just wrote, and I had there's this album actually, Marty for President, and his songs were The One About. He kind of started it that way, and so I just wrote The One About, and I wrote the lady blah 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 blah, and wrote a really short poem, and I liked the format, and from that I just became extremely observant about everything around, and it just started coming together as a poem, as a book, and yeah, I can remember the day we met. I think it was at Debbie Bryan or Specialty Cafe, and I was like, oh yeah, so I have the book, and you thought it was the edit of the first one I brought, and this time I'd finished this, laid it out in the format, printed it, and you were like, whoa, okay, this is way different.
Yeah, yeah. I felt like you used to, we were talking a little bit before about how you're not writing so much now, but you used to write a lot. And I remember saying to you, the kind of photographer you are, I know you can be that poet. and your photographs capture the very essence of the people. It's not just like, they're beautiful photographs. You seem to catch people at gentle moments, resting moments. And I think I felt with that first manuscript that it was too busy, there was too much in it, and I wanted you to hone in on the essence. And the thing I love about the one about is that you do observe, you are very quiet, and you let people speak, and then you will sit back and go, well, I think that. So I just felt that it really captured you, the spirit of Akor.
Thanks. The whole idea of observing people, for me, generally came from the thought that whatever I'm about to say would likely be said by someone else, so why say it? And so it's usually when there seems to be something left or something unsaid that I then share, bring up my opinion about the situation. And that has in so many ways influenced how I still write, because I find that in moving to London, I find the poetry is very external, in that it looks at things that are occurring and it addresses those issues, right? In a very good way, which I find I don't think I've been able to explore that sort of socially conscious type poem. But in my observation, in my ability to observe things, or my preference to observing things, is that I write a lot more about how I feel about something, or what feeling something evokes in me. And that, I think the one about just always came into that. It was this very objective description of something, and then how I felt about it. And I just explored that in small, short poems. Didn't spend 10 minutes reading one poem. So, yeah.
Would you like to share a poem with us now?
Yeah. Yes, I should. In that light, there was one poem when I started writing this new set of poems. I came up with this one, which in London, what I usually find is that I am on a train and there are people there, and yeah, I would like to write something. So yeah, this is called On the Musing. A list of things and how I feel about their presence or existence. Pistachio green trousers and many pockets. There is a sense of nature that can only be undermined by a wearer doing pull-ups on the underground. Pink sneakers with pink laces and a red stain. You should sing some more to friends and strangers about where you would rather be. Lemon green sneakers and Japanese smiles. I can ask you many questions and expect no response and still be pleased by your silence. Green jacket, beige trousers, and brown shoes. There was a time when the ease of existence seemed like an inconvenience we dutifully wore, like our names never knew laughter or joy was not written with us in mind. Wired earphones and the long dangle they show. We have spent much of our history cutting short our journeys, hoping that getting there quicker would make us happier than our disappointments and those we share with them. Gold wedding rings and restful fingers they hold together. Breathe. There is some earth to share and love. Blue silicone wristbands and the words they carry. First off, let's paint our hearts, then the fields, then the stars. I swear I will stand with you through the paradise of blizzards we call life.
Oh, thank you. They were like photographs, and the thoughts behind the photograph. That was beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
You must do some great people watching on the train.
I like the fact that people on the underground are almost entirely transient. You most likely would not sit next to that person in life again, and it just occurs then just that small moment. And so for me, it's for that poem. I can't remember the day. I think I can remember the day to be in my book somewhere, but I don't know who those people are. So I just describe what I can see and what I feel, and it's this moment in time, a snapshot, and we'll move on. And most of them, none of them would know I wrote a poem about them. And I just, yeah.
So you mentioned there about, which it was like, oh yeah, exciting, a second
Yeah.
collection. So you
Oh,
are writing and you are working on a second collection then, are you?
yep. Yeah. So I started, it, again, the same thing occurred actually. I started writing a certain collection, which was, they were like afters, but not necessarily in the form of afters. And one of the poems I'll read today will be from that. I'd gone relatively far. I have half of a good number of them transcribed. And then one day, something occurred and I wrote another style. And I was like, yeah, I think I like this for now. And I switched to that, which they felt like free writes at first. And they were, in a certain way, inspired by one workshop we did together in Ugly Bread Bakery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was when we're told to write 2 poems in one and work like that. But I wrote it like a free write, and it continued to morph from that idea. And again, combined with something else, there's this other style I started working on, which looked at how to write a short poem without, how to write a poem and leave the essence out of it. No, that's not a good way to describe it. It's to write a poem that when it's read, the person understands what is unsaid. And that's the point of the poem, is the unsaid that is the poem, not the poem itself. And I would explain how that came about. But so when I combined all of this, it just came to the current style that I've been writing on. And Under Musings, which is the first poem I just read, is one of that. But the initial style that inspired it is what I want to read next,
Lovely.
which is, so when I write afters, right, it is, I see a line in a poem, a film, a show or something, and I write from that. And this is one of my favorite ones. Sherina Estabani, an Iranian student on This American Life, episode 664, The Room of Requirement, said, I miss your smell. The one that grows through the first tears like curry and garlic and all spices that made home our garden and its quiet sunset real. My inhale have been vacant. There is no you to tell me my smile, to tell me of my smile, or to walk through my sight. I swear I doubt my vision. I love the tiny footprints you have left in my thoughts. And though I run my fingers through their groove till they fill with freshly brewed sweat and old hidden tears sprouting from my longing, they still lack your smell. They still lack your smell. I miss you. I miss the way you fall into my orbit and pull all that is in me into your whirlpool. My senses are you. My love is intertwined. My heart wrenches, my heart wrenches, my heart wrenches. I miss you, my dear. You whose essence is the reason for my breath.
Oh, thank you. That's classic Akor, that is. So is that more the way that you're going to be moving forward for the next collection?
It would be sort of partially, because technically, as soon as I finish the next collection, I'll go back to this style and finish it. I have the poems written. I would have to go through a series of edits, but this would be the style that would come in the next collection. And the reason why I like this is how, from the point where she says, I miss your smell, it just grows into the poem without stopping. And I really like telling the story about that poem, by the way. It was, it happened during the initial Muslim ban in the United States. And the podcast, This American Life, did a piece on this place on the border of America and Canada, which is a library. And libraries, you can come from America into the library, you can come from Canada into the library. And so a lot of people who had families studying, especially students who were studying, the main character is Sherina Estabani, who I need to contact, can just throw her name in a poem like that, is she's doing a PhD in mechanical engineering, I think, in the United States. And so her family, so most families would fly to Canada and then the student to come to the library, and they'll all go into the library and meet. And the library is this neutral zone. They're obviously immigration agents. They're watching, making sure nothing happens. The library is strict. You can't make any noise. So families just meet under this really quiet place. And when she was narrating her story in the podcast, she said that she felt her dad just kept, sniffing her. And, when he hugged her, he took a deep breath like that. And she asked him, what's wrong? And he says, I miss your smell. And that was that was hard to listen to, because yeah. And so that's when I stopped and wrote the poem.
That's beautiful. So poetry, I know we always talk about poetry, but I'm curious how much of a part of your life it is. Is it such a major part of your life?
It is a significant part of my life, but I doubt I would ever. I constantly doubt I'll ever be a full-time poet, like that. And I think it's because there's so much I want to be able to do, or to be able to do, and being a full-time poet doesn't seem to be on top of the chart. But I think as a poet, one thing that occurs, especially when I start going through phases where I'm writing constantly, it makes me filter everything through. How does this affect me? How do I see this? What is this meaning of this? And I always want to have a double take on those things. So how much of it is, it's like, how is it an influence? I would say poetry becomes this, it's not a cocoon, but this filter that rests around everything I do, so that even when I'm in another field in teaching an engineering class, I would have ideas for poetry, because what I'm seeing and how people are interacting with me still passes through that net of poetry. So I would say it's like if you ask an onion, what is an onion? This is a weird metaphor. But if you ask an onion, what's an onion? Would the onion be able to pick any of its layers to call itself that layer? Or does each layer come together to form what the onion is? And I think poetry is like that for me. Ooh, that's how
I like that. I love the onion. And I know that with the conversations you just said at the start of this conversation, how many of our talks have started, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? And we have had lots of conversations. I love it, because I'm often like, oh, that would never work because blah, blah, blah. And then you just go and do it. And what I love about the way you approach your poetry projects is that they draw in non-poets. I mean, I'm a firm believer that we're all poets with a small p, but you draw in people who would have found poetry intimidating, and that's an exciting thing for me. So I know you've always worked with the thought of images linking with poems, and you used to do amazing nights where you would bake and everyone would bring food and we'd meet together, poets and non-poets, and the poets would share poems and the group would chat about them, and that was a beautiful thing as well. So what more harebrained schemes have you come up with in terms of poetry?
First, I do want to continue Poem and Nouveau. That's where people share poems and the cakes and all. It gives me an excuse to bake for people. I like that. I like the collaborative nature. I think poetry usually, I think the way I understood that, the way people interact with poetry, is how I understood maths. A lot of people would say, I am not good in maths, I don't like maths. And as an engineer, and a teacher, one of the things I've known is most people say that, but they mean I had a terrible maths teacher and they turned me off maths. Because once you understand how everything you think about goes through maths, even when you're not a mathematician, you calculate, you count, you assume, you have probabilities, then you'd start seeing the occurrence of maths in your life, and it just makes a whole lot of difference. And so the thing is, how do you get people to get interested in maths? How do you get people to get interested in math? And in poetry, it's the same thing. Half of the people that say, I don't like poetry or I don't care about poetry, studied some Shakespeare piece or one old classic poet. And it was taught as this unchangeable thing, this really stern thing while they were in school. Whereas when they listen to hip hop, they're like, I don't like poetry, but I like this. And there's the whole controversy, is hip hop poetry? So that's a different topic. But when they listen to contemporary poets, they can relate to things. They can see their opinions and the styles of how they speak and how they relate. And they now get to like it. And so I usually don't like it when you go to a poetry show and everyone in the audience is a poet who either is waiting for the open mic or knows some of the poets that are going to be on stage. Whereas we should be carrying out poetry in places where people who have never encountered poetry in this form would say, I didn't know that poetry could be like that. You don't have to rhyme every line or use big words and sound like Shakespeare in it. And so that has caused me to always want to find new ways to have people experience poetry. And one of them is just, was the poema novel, where people, when the poet finishes, the audience can ask questions. And people who have no idea what poetry is in this contemporary way can ask questions. But moving on, what the main project I've been looking at is working on is an interactive exhibition where poets pick some of their pieces and turn them into art installations that are interactive. And then you can have people interact with them. That way people would not just see the word, but see how it can perceive it in a new way. They can touch it. And this is not just about printing your poems on A1 pieces of paper and posting it on the wall. It actually is pushing yourself beyond just writing these words. What did you see when you wrote your poem? How can we put that into reality and exhibit that in front of people? I know the rise of one-man shows or one-person shows has become quite a thing on the poetry scene, but it's to make this in a more concrete manner and people to encounter it in different ways. So I really, 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 times 1,000, want to have exhibitions. And it's not, again, I can't have an exhibition on my own like that. I want to work with loads of poets, come up with 3 or 4 poems, convert them into art pieces, get a gallery, and we all exhibit some pieces of work there. And that, again, would draw people from different fields into seeing poetry in a new light. And I'm sure if someone likes a piece that was inspired by a certain poem, it will lead them back to that. And gradually, you'd have more people including poetry in their lives.
Wow, I'd go and see that. Pick me, pick me. Because there is, most of the poets I know, that's how you do write a poem. It's jam-packed with smells and sounds and memories and people and locations and all that stuff.
True.
We pack it into this little verse.
And just display.
So that's, I mean, yeah, that's exciting. That's something that sounds like you need to persuade people to give you money to help you do.
Yeah.
Or is it something that could be a DIY project?
The initial version, I think, shouldn't be that expensive, because at first, the ones I've thought about, the poems I do want to exhibit like that, I would not need to spend any considerable amount of money. I think most of the costs would be in a venue, and I would like a gallery or a massive warehouse where people go to. And so I would not, if a poet comes to talk about, there's a golden statue in my living room, you're not about to build a golden statue. That is like, there's no one good on that. So just like almost every dream, I think you should plan big and start small, and then you can grow it from there. So hopefully at the end of it, there'll be regular poetry exhibitions of that nature, with a lot better funding. But in starting, we'd have to start relatively small and build it from there.
I wonder if I'm making an assumption here, mathematical assumption. I wonder if, because you came into poetry from elsewhere, that's why your mind is so open to the possibilities. Because some poets are, I'm a writer, I write poetry, I am a poet, and it's all quite a closed idea of what a poet is. And you seem, to be like completely open to any interpretation.
I've never thought of it that way, but that is a possibility. And it might be, again, because I really like designing, just graphic design and photography. And when I did teach design, I told my students, as a designer, one of the things you shouldn't do is you never think of yourself as, I'm a designer, this is my job, and this is where I'll stay. Because none of your clients would be designers. Therefore, if a client comes from biomedical engineering or from mining, you need to have a good idea of some of the things in those fields. And therefore, you have to explore them. You have to read in that section. You have to get ideas from there. And the whole process of idea creation is just random things colliding in our brains. So for you to have better ideas, you need to have more random things to collide and form these good ideas. And so I think that helps, that knowledge helps me to work towards this, just helps me to generate different ideas like that. And I think if someone told you to write a poem now about the national holiday for Tuvalu, for instance, you have very little knowledge of the country. You can either go there for your next holiday or just get pictures and books and stories and songs from the country, and you come with something like that. And I think once poets continue to do that, we would constantly create ideas that push us beyond what we traditionally thought poetry was supposed to be.
So, cue another poem, I think.
Okay. Yes. How to dream. Lesson 1. Breathe. There is no need to let your insides cry and scream before you fall or rise. You must call into you this breath that no one taught you to take and no one should take from you. You are and will be okay. Lesson 2. Shut your eyes. Not so tight that your eyelids hurt and squirm, no. And not so tight that you scrunch up your face, no. Just gently, like a hug. Like you want to hold light in you, and for a minute, all the colors you know come awake only because your beautiful heart breathes. Lesson 3. Breathe. Make sure you always remember to let your lungs wake and sleep. And though your very loneliness has mastered this autonomous task, you once in a while should take the wheels and walk through the tree line and branches. Lesson 4. Remember you exist. Remember your limbs are present and each part of you that is here is still here and you exist. Remember that your knuckles itch, that your cheeks can flush and glow and betray your heart that is soft and diamond and angry and cotton. Lesson 5. Follow the simple feather. Follow it as it falls from your hand and caresses your face on its way to nowhere until you realize that it will one day be back and you are on this feather and you're here and you exist. Remember to breathe. In, out, and fall. You are both a feather and a planet.
Wow. Thank you. We are we're hammering through the time here as normal. I'm like, oh no, should do it longer. Would you like to end on another poem?
Yeah. The last poem I want to read is, yes, a friend of mine who really, a very dear friend of mine, she likes trees, and yeah, she in many ways inspired this in a certain way. All right. When I am gone, I want you to plant a tree for every time you think of me, tossing seeds and shoots around and everywhere like you were trying to fill everything with me or trying to let everything in you out. I imagine my memory like a forest, that the first few moments would be a dense jungle with a lifetime away would be a savanna, but still remembered as the sun drowns in the horizon and my memory is both a steady cedar and a shadow. I want your memory of me to breathe fresh air to this world, like I was giving back the life I had lived again and again, till under those arms you will bring your new dreams to rest. I want the backyard of your grandchildren's house to have an old tree in it, somewhere your great-grandchildren will feel safe. I want them to plant a tree when you are gone and turn their world to a jungle where they would pluck seeds from your memory of me to fix their memory of you in the earth. I want you to be a forest. You will live forever and ever as we breathe life into this earth, just like it in us breathes.
That's a great poem to end on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know we've tried to schedule this in and keep missing each other, so I'm really glad we made it in the end. And I want you to come to Nottingham soon, or we might have to come down in a minivan and get you.
Yeah, hopefully I'll come around soon. Yeah, it'd be nice to have tea or coffee again.
It would, and cake.
Yeah, oh, definitely cake.
Thanks, Akor. I really enjoyed talking to you, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye.
Yeah, bye.